Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another installment of Scott's Selections here for Wednesday, November 20th. Before we get into today's play of the day, quick recap of what happened yesterday. Unfortunately, we picked up a loss with the Citadel in Southeast Missouri State over 166, which was available on DraftKings at minus 109. A lot of line movement in that game, all towards the over. We ended up getting a good number as it closed at roughly 168. Unfortunately, it didn't matter as that game completely came to a crawl late, and you ended up with roughly 140-something points. It was unfortunate, but the Citadel over was hit every single game so far leading up to that game. There's no reason to think otherwise. Plus, we got a good number, but unfortunately, it did not work out. We had some overtime draws late, but honestly, you don't go into a bet hoping for overtime. So overall, it wasn't the right side apparently, but it is what it is, and we'll look to bounce back on Wednesday. Now, in terms of today's card, quick announcement. Not really a fan of anything on today's card, including college basketball, NBA, really anything. So we're going to do what we did last week. We're going to be giving out a look-ahead line on one college football matchup that will be taking place on Saturday. We were able to win last week, so we ended up giving out USC against California, and USC ended up smacking them by 24 points, and hopefully we'll get the same outcome this week. And the matchup we're going to be looking at is between Arkansas State and Georgia Southern. And we've bet on both teams in the past. We've actually we're undefeated with Arkansas State, and we are 0-1 against Georgia Southern as we have not touched them since their opening game against LSU. And yeah, that wasn't really that fun. But either or, in terms of the actual matchup here, there has been a favorite switch here, as Arkansas State originally was a minus 1 point favorite, and now Georgia Southern is currently minus 1 and even minus 1.5 at Pinnacle or some of the offshore books. So based on that, in terms of the play today, we'll be on Georgia Southern on the money line, which is available on FanDuel at minus 115 at time of recording of 2:31 p.m. on Wednesday, November 20th. Now, the main reason why I like this play, in addition to the line movement, is just based on the fact that I simply think Georgia Southern is the better overall team. Both teams are 6-4 with a 4-2 record in conference play. However, once you actually take a deep dive at the statistics, I just think Georgia Southern is a better overall team. If you look at Arkansas State, they have one of the worst defenses in the entire country. They are allowing 479.8 yards per game, whereas Georgia Southern is giving up 379, so an 100-yard difference in terms of defense. In terms of pass yards allowed, Arkansas State's worse, but Georgia Southern's actually respectable, giving up 235.1 passing yards per game. And the main reason why I like it is based on the fact that Arkansas State's rush defense is absolutely terrible. It is giving up 215.4 rushing yards per game, which is extremely important considering the fact that Georgia Southern likes to run an option scheme on offense. Wirtz has the ability to throw, but for the most part, they run the ball, I'd say, at least 80% of their snaps, and I think Arkansas State will struggle with that on Saturday. Another reason why I like this matchup for Georgia Southern is based on the fact that there are two pros of running an option system or a run-heavy scheme. One is that you dominate time possession, and two is that you dominate the turnover margin. So I'll start with the turnover margin. Georgia Southern currently ranks 22nd in the entire nation in turnover margin per game. Georgia Southern averages plus 0.7 turnovers per game in terms of margin. Meanwhile, Arkansas State, so Georgia Southern is in the top 25 in the nation in terms of turnover margin per game, whereas Arkansas State ranks 111th as they are averaging negative 0.7 turnovers per game. In other words, Arkansas State turns the ball over a lot. They don't force many turnovers, and Georgia Southern barely turns the ball over, and they actually force some turnovers. So I think turnover margin will be a huge factor, as well as time of possession. Arkansas State last week, for example, had 2 interceptions and 3 fumbles lost, as they almost lost to Coastal Carolina. But overall, I just think this matchup just suits Georgia Southern pretty well, based on the fact that they've been rolling lately. They've won 5 of their last 6. They were even able to beat a very talented Appalachian State team on the road a couple weeks ago, and I think that should play a factor as they have experience winning these tough road games. I think this game will be close, but at the end of the day, I just think that Georgia Southern is just the better overall team due to their defense, as well as their willingness to exploit one of Arkansas State's weaknesses, which is the ability to run the ball. Now, I'm just pulling up the time of possession stat. Georgia Southern ranks 17th in the country in time of possession, averaging roughly 32 minutes and 35 seconds per game of with the ball. So I definitely think that that's impressive considering the fact that they're in the top 20 again. Whereas Arkansas State ranks 92nd, averaging 28 minutes and 38 seconds. So I expect Georgia Southern to dominate the clock. I think they'll dominate the turnover margin. I think Wirtz will make enough plays on the ground. I think plus they also have a better special teamer. They have a better kicker, and I think that could play a potential factor in here. I'm not surprised that the favorite has switched in this game. It is senior day for Arkansas State, so you have to wonder how much of a factor that will play. But at the end of the day, I just think Georgia Southern is a really annoying team to play without an extra week of preparation due to their option scheme. I think Hatcher will continue to turn the ball over for Arkansas State. This game should be close, but I think Georgia Southern will limit the errors, and I think that Arkansas State will eventually dig their own grave due to the interception and fumble issues. So, play today will be on Georgia Southern on the money line, which is available at minus 115 on FanDuel. Now, in terms of the leans for today's card, we'll start with the college football games today. They didn't go well yesterday, just in general in terms of the leans, but hopefully we'll be able to do better today. In terms of Miami, Ohio versus Akron, Miami, Ohio is laying 31, and the over-under has gone from 45.5 to 44.5. I'll lean to the over, and I'll lean to Miami, Ohio minus the 31. Akron's just awful. I know that people have talked about how bad UMass is so far this season, just based on the fact that every team's beaten them by roughly 60. UMass actually beat Akron earlier this year as a true testament to how bad Akron actually is. I think Miami's going to win this game by 35 or so. I think Akron should score some touchdowns. I don't think they're going to be completely shut out. But as a whole, I think Miami, Ohio will win this game pretty easily. So I personally would take Miami, Ohio, and the over. Moving on, Buffalo versus Toledo. I'll lean to Buffalo here. Toledo really just has fallen apart so far this season. And last week I gave out as a lean on Northern Iowa against Toledo. I just don't like this Toledo team. I'm not a fan of Peters at quarterback. I don't think that the coaching staff is any good. If you watched how they completely mishandled clock management in the first half and the second half last week, I just don't trust Toledo's coaching staff. I don't like their quarterback. I don't like their defense at all. I think Buffalo is more fundamentally sound. I think they will take care of business, and I think they will win this game by double digits. We'll lean to Buffalo in that one. Now, in terms of the rest of the card, looking at the NBA, what do I like here? I'll actually lean to the Nets here at minus 4. I know Kyrie's not playing, but at the same point, Charlotte's just bad, and they're one of the worst teams in the league. The Nets, they have played terribly lately, but I think they'll win this game by 6 or so. I'm a Nets fan. I'm kind of familiar with how they play. This is the kind of game where they'll win. People think they're suddenly good, and then they'll end up being terrible for the next couple of days. But I think they will win this game. I think that Charlotte doesn't have enough weapons, enough three-point shooting from the outside. I think if Brooklyn can actually get on Graham and force Charlotte into some tough shots, I just don't think they have the shooting to compete. Overall, lean to the Nets on that one. Moving on, in terms of the rest of the card, I'm going to lean to Utah minus 3. Minnesota just beat Utah, and yet Utah is still favored by 3 here. I think Utah's going to get revenge. I think Utah should win this game. I'll lean to Utah on that one, mostly for a revenge angle. In terms of anything else, I'll lean to the Spurs minus 2.5. The Spurs have been terrible lately, but the Wizards just aren't good. And the Spurs almost came back and beat the Mavericks in their last game, which is a bit optimistic. So I'll lean to the Spurs. I think they should win this game, and I think the Wizards are just bad. I mean, they're just a really bad basketball team. The Spurs, I think, aren't great either, but they're in a bit of a rut. This team was projected to make the playoffs. I think that they will turn it around. Lean to San Antonio. I think they'll figure out a way to get it done. So lean to the Spurs there. Now, for college basketball, looking at the betting card today, I really just didn't like anything. My favorite college basketball play was the under between Syracuse and Cornell, as each of the last 6 meetings have gone under, so I would have leaned to the under there. I thought about giving out his play today, but I decided against it, as I just kind of want to take the day off from college basketball. I just didn't really like anything enough to give it out as play today, so I was not going to force it, but I would have leaned to Syracuse on the under, as I think that game will be pretty low scoring. Other than that, lean to San Diego State. It was originally at 5.5 last night in the overnight. It's up to 7.5 now. I actually wrote an article about it for Winners and Whiners. Overall, San Diego State's just a better overall team. This team's better on the boards, the better at scoring, the better at defense. There's nothing San Diego actually does better than San Diego State, and I think San Diego State might absolutely destroy this team. They've had issues covering at San Diego, though, so that is something to keep in mind based on historical information. But I still think this year's version of San Diego State is much better than this year's version of San Diego, and I would bet accordingly, lean to the Aztecs to get the job done. Other than that, though, Yeah, not really a fan of anything else. I've looked through pretty much every matchup trying to find a play of the day yesterday. Didn't really like anything enough to give it out. Uh, yeah, I would lean to the over 142.5 with Indiana and Princeton, as Indiana's just been an absolute, they've been a machine so far this season. Nobody stopped them offensively, and Archie Miller's got himself a hell of a program growing in Indiana, and I think Indiana could be a sleeper candidate to potentially make a run in the tournament if they get in, or even to potentially compete for a Big Ten title. But season's still early. I still like their team. Princeton has actually been pretty efficient offensively as well, and I think this game will go over the total. I think Indiana could score easily 80 or 90, and I think Princeton will be able to score at least 60 or even 70. So lean to the over on that one. But other than that, nothing else to really talk about here. Play of the day will be on Georgia Southern on the money line at minus 115 on FanDuel for their football matchup against Arkansas State on Saturday. Other than that, though, let's get over this installment of Scott Selections here for Wednesday, November 20th. Good luck to all of you and your respective bets today. Bye, everyone.